Parliament's Finance Committee has recommended a discontinuation of the current loan agreement for members of Parliament and members of the Council of State. Now, this decision was reached after the Finance Committee met to deliberate on the Finance Minister's $28 million loan agreement to purchase vehicles for the 275 members of Parliament. Now, the committee, in its recommendations yet to be put before the House, is saying that the MPs and members of the Council of State should have duty post vehicles. That's a new one to this. And the other arrangement as other Article 71 office holders. Now, the committee also recommends that Parliament and the Parliamentary Service Board takes the necessary steps to ensure that this happens. The committee further said the current loan agreement before the House for MPs and Council of State members should therefore be the last the state is sponsoring. This recommendation, the committee says, is born out of the public outcry and discontent raised by sections of the public as the loan agreement was laid before Parliament. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Finance is also requesting a tax waiver of $13.38 million for the purchase of the 275 vehicles for the members of Parliament and members of the Council of State for the period of 2021 to 2024. So the recommendation is that this is the last MP's car loan we're going to see. That's the recommendation. In addition to this is that $13.3 million tax waiver that the Finance Ministry is seeking on the purchase of these 275 vehicles for members of Parliament with the car loan. I'm going to give you the details of what this tax waiver, the $13.3 million, what it entails. Import duty, they want it off. Import get fund levy, also, that's what you see on your screens there. Import NHIL, they want it off. Exim levy, import VAT, COVID-19 recovery levy, special import levy, ECOWAS levy, AU levy, inspection fees, withholding tax, that's the ITS tax deposit. They want all of this off. This is what the details of the tax waiver that amounts to $13.3 million the Finance Ministry wants off the purchase of these 275 vehicles for members of Parliament. But there's another concern, because the alternative that the MPs want in place of their car loan is for the state to provide vehicles for them. Okay? Now we're going to go into the state coffers to provide vehicles for the members of Parliament. This goes to bring up another concern, because already, if you look at the Article 71 office holders, as captured in the Constitution, the state is providing vehicles for justices of the Superior Court, 168, ministers and deputy ministers, 84, Council of State, 31, Lands Commission, 25, National Council for Higher Education, 19. These are estimated figures. National Media Commission, 15. And this is what the estimate that we put to it, just to give us a clear idea of the burden on the national kitty in terms of providing vehicles for these state agencies. National Commission for Civic Education, 7. Public Service Commission, 5. Electoral Commission, 4. Parliament Speaker, deputies, the state is providing for them, 3. Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, 3. District Common Fund Administrator, President, Vice President. And you look at the whole presidency in itself, the state is also providing vehicles for the presidency. It has their own presidential vehicle fleet. So all of this, Portia, is what is raising the concern that people have about this decision, the alternative to now have the state provide vehicles for members of parliament. Dr. Rashid Draman is the man you see on your screens. He's joined us via Zoom. He is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, good evening to you. Thank you for your time this evening. First of all, I find out your reaction to this development, 13.3 million tax waiver, and this is inclusive of the 60% of the car loan that we are told that the state is going to take care of. That's $60,000 out of the $100,000 for them, the members of parliament.
Alfred, good evening to your listeners. I think for me, the more I think about this and reflect on this reaction to the issue about the cars for MPs, the more I ask myself, I mean, why and how did we get to this point over the years that members of parliament have just simply maybe sat down and allowed a practice that I think is quite unfair to them in terms of having other branches of our government be provided with means of transport to do their work. And over the years, we've had members of parliament having to cough up, if you like, I mean, resources of their own to pay for vehicles and means of transport to go and do their work as members of parliament. So I just want to establish that fact that I think the arrangement right from day one is one that is not fair to our members of parliament. Now, if we come to the current debate, you see, sometimes we tend to, use members of parliament as scapegoats. Nobody is questioning why ministers and deputy ministers are being provided with means of transport. Nobody is questioning why chief executives, even at the lowest level of our decentralized structures, are being provided with means of transport. But when it comes to members of parliament, people are up in arms. I just don't understand. And so I think we have to have a kind of much bigger debate in terms of what we are going to do when it comes to the transport arrangements for all Article 71 office holders. You've mentioned a number of them. I was earlier on one of
I just wanted to find out, you've raised a concern about the objection that, or the concern people have about this alternative, but you're vexed with what pertains in other jurisdictions, at least on the continent. What arrangement exists in other countries for members of parliament to have vehicles by the state? Yes, I think it's the form in which it would come. That's why people are concerned.
Yes, I think each country cuts its coat according to the cloth that it has. So you look at your resources, you look at what you can afford as a country, and then arrangements are made for all those that deserve to lead the country and to be taken care of, if you like. So you look at, on the continent, we have places where members of parliament are not provided with any transport at all, to places where members of parliament are supported with some facilities to transport themselves, I mean, in terms of allowances and so on, to places where members of parliament are provided vehicles to do their work, to places where, like in Botswana, where members of parliament rely on a pool of vehicles that they draw upon when they go out to do their work. Now, you go out of our continent, for instance, in a country like Australia, members of parliament given, state-of-the-art vehicles and so on. And then you go to the Scandinavia country, a country like Sweden that is very frugal. Members of parliament use the public transport, the train, and then they live in public housing and so on. So I think, it all depends, Alfred, case by case. But I think in our country, given the challenges that we have as a developing country, we need to take a second look at this as a whole and try and see what is it that we are going to provide to members of parliament as well as members of the executive?
Right. Dr. Rashid Rahman, thank you. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And this is an evolving or developing story. We're going to stay within a subsequent bulletin. Dr. Rashid Rahman is the director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Pause here.